It is extremely important that we know our mind, how our mind thinks. And thoughts will lead to actions and speech. And actions and speech dominate our life. Our life is a result of our action and speech. And if an action and speech is habituated, it becomes a personality and all that. We all know that. So every thought is important. A wholesome thought, unwholesome thought, they're different. So it is extremely important that we know how we think. That's the reason why we've been studying consciousnesses. And the Buddhist teaching, one of the schools of the Buddhist teaching is to study one's own thought so that we can lead our thought to enlightenment. Ordinary people may not know the importance of a thought. You just think, and you don't know why you think that way. You don't know when, why, where, how you think. And the study of the Buddhist studies is to tell us how we think, when we think, why we think it that way. So that's why we're studying it. Nothing about blind faith. It's about study of one's thought. So what's the benefit of knowing your thought? If you know your thought, you'll lead your thought to wholesome behavior. And wholesome behavior will lead to happiness of this life. And more than just happiness in this life, it will lead to an elevation from this world to another world. That's what we call nirvana. An eternal, if we can, well, just use that word, quote unquote, eternity. Go to an eternity of bliss and of happiness. From this world of suffering and mental afflictions, going to another to the higher stage of perfection. All right, without further ado, let's continue with our thought. So we know that the Buddhist studies the whole world. And we know that we can study everything. All the basic elements of the world. We go even deeper to protons, electrons, atoms, neutrons. We cannot study unlimited amount of information, unlimited amount of knowledge about the world. So the Buddha and later philosophers classify everything in this world into 100 dhammas. And 100 dhammas are categorized into 5 categories. We say consciousnesses, 8 dhammas, forms of materiality, 11 dhammas, and concomitant mental functions, 51 dhammas. Dhammas non-interactive of the mind, 24 of these dhammas. What is dhamma? Dhamma are things. We just call them things. Everything. We don't know how to represent things. We just call them dhammas. And these are conditioned dhammas. And there are 6 unconditioned dhammas. So if you add up all the 5 categories with different quantities, that comprise 100 dhammas. And we have been studying consciousnesses, the 8 consciousnesses. Remember the eye consciousness, vision consciousness, audition consciousness, auditory consciousness, olfaction consciousness, taste, tactility, mentality, ego consciousness, and alaya consciousness, the 8 consciousness that we have in store in us, the 8 consciousness. We already have studied them in detail. We also have studied materiality, forms, our eyes, all the objects the eye can see, ears, all the sound that the ears can listen, nose, all the smell and fragrance that the nose can experience, tongue, all the taste. Body includes everything of our body, the internal organs, and touch, our tactility, and all those objects we're in contact with, plus forms included in Dhamma ayatana, that is, materiality that appears only in our illusion, in our dreams, So it includes everything. Materiality, it includes all materiality. So this world is consciousness or the mind with the external materiality. That we already have studied. All the forms, all the materiality. Everything we see, everything we contact. And then we also study concomitant mental functions. These are concomitant mental functions that we have studied. 51 of them. General interactive functions, particular functions, unwholesome functions, wholesome functions, and the 4 indeterminate functions. When your senses interact with the externalities, with all the environments, with all the objects, all these mental functions simultaneously come out. General interactive functions, particular functions. Sometimes you have particular situations that you apply particular functions. Unwholesome functions, wholesome functions, and 4 indeterminate functions. All those will have functions. That's how we think. When you analyze a thought, you have to know your thought in detail. You may not know. Every thought already carries all these kind of functions. You may not know about it. You get mad and you don't know why you get mad. Now you know because you analyze your madness. You are jealous. You don't know why you're jealous. Now you know because you analyze your jealousy. You have depression. You don't know why you have depression, but now you should know because you analyze depression. By studying in that way, you know your relationship of you with all the members of the family, of the society that you interact with. You understand yourself and people better. You resolve your problems in a better way because of your mutual understanding. So it's very important that you have to get into this psychology of the Buddhist studies. But they are quite profound. The profundity of it sometimes is beyond our general intelligence and mental comprehension. But it does not mean that we just ignore it. It does not mean that we fail to try to understand it. We want to understand it. Even though it is very profound, we still want to understand it as much as we can absorb. So Buddhism is not about getting a blessing from Buddha. It's about these. To some students, we're going through a course of profound psychology. Yes, it is. It's knowledge. It all stored in all the sutras and abhidhammas and sastras of the Buddhist studies, which have been passed from 2,600 years ago up to now. Are you interested in knowing it? You haven't known about it. Now you should research into it because that affects you. That accounts for maybe by understanding it, it may lead you to some enlightenment that you can't even conceive in your mind. Now explore that odyssey of spirituality that you're interested in. Not just materiality, spirituality. So we have 8 consciousnesses, 11 materialities, dhammas, and 51 concomitant mental functions. And we have dhammas non-interactive with our mind, not associated in our mind, but they exist. What are these? Just give some examples. What are these? For example, the concept of space. What is this space area? The concept. That concept of space. Space, sometimes we define them as north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest. They have certain positions. But these positions are fictitiously established by the relationship between consciousness and the object. They don't exist because north cannot cognize, north cannot think, space cannot think, so they are not consciousness. Space cannot think. They cannot cognize. Neither are them objects. They're not objects. They are objects in space, but space is not object. So they are not materiality, they are not consciousness, because they cannot think. How can north, south, east, west think? They are just fictitious concept established by the relationship between consciousness and objects. They appear as different to different people. It's north to me, but it's south to you. East to you and west to that person over there. So there are dharmas that are non-interactive with the mind. We call them dharmas non-interactive with the mind. 24 of them. And today we're going to cover some of these. 24 non-interactive with the mind. In other words, they're not associated with the mind. But these are established concepts. Time is an established concept. Space is an established concept. But time and space themselves, they cannot think. They're not objects. They are beyond the mind. Let us explore in them. But before we explore into interactivity, let's say, what is regarded as interactive? Now, if we know that what is interactive, then we know what is not interactive. Let us explore into what would be regarded as interactive. And what would be regarded, what are the characteristics that the mind would say are interacting with externalities? Does this sound too profound to you? No? Do you understand what I'm talking about? So what is regarded as interactive? If consciousness and mental functions arise simultaneously, then it's interactive. That means ears listening to criticism. You criticize me, you yell at me, it arises. But I hate it. I hate your yelling. So in other words, they arise simultaneously, then that would be interactive. Because when my ear consciousness interact with the sound of your criticism, at the same time my mental functions of hatred, discomfort will come out. So in other words, they arise simultaneously. So that would be interactive. Let us define what is interactive first, then we know what is not interactive. You know my logic? My logic is, let's know the positive first, then we know that what is not positive is negative. You see the logic? Next, when consciousness and mental functions share the same sensory organ, for example, the sound of criticism and ear consciousness depend on the same sensory organ, the nerves of the ear. In other words, my ear consciousness depends on my eardrum, my nervous system in the ears sensory organ. That's my basis. My ear consciousness depends on the basis of the ear's nerves. But the ear's nerves also listen to the sound. So they all depend on the same thing, on the same basis. If that is the case, that is regarded as interactive. Otherwise, it's not interactive. Third, consciousness and mental functions interact with the same object. They have the same object. Sound is the object for both the ear consciousness and the mental function. The mental function of hatred, of hate. I hate you criticizing me. I hate you yelling at me. That sound is the object of my hatred. But then the ear consciousness also has that object. So they have the same object. So when we take a look at it, the first one is simultaneously the same time sharing, simultaneously the same basis of the share, simultaneously of the same object. Then if these three conditions fulfill, then we call that interactive. But we know that in this universe, there are things that do not conform to these three conditions. If they don't conform to these three conditions, they would be regarded as non-interactive. That is, whatever is not positive becomes negative. Do you see the logic? If not, then this. If it is not positive, then it's negative. That's how we define it. So, if any Dharma that has the characteristics of the above, so you should know that if you study Buddhism, you have to know logic. Preferably, you take a course in symbolic logic. or Introduction to Logic. Otherwise, you cannot understand the Buddhist teaching in detail. So you have to think logically first. However, there are dharmas that go beyond logic. If anything that goes beyond logic, then it is non-interactive with the mind, not associated with the mind. If it's beyond logic, it's not associated with the mind, because the mind is seeking logic. But logic is not the final destination. Logic is just logic, the way you think logically. But there is a danger in not thinking even logically. Then your mind will be dispersing all over the place because you're not logical. So logic helps us, and also in another way, we have to go beyond it to get to nirvana, to get to enlightenment. All right, if dharma that has the characteristic of the above, they are regarded as interactive with the mind. Otherwise, they are non-interactive with the mind. They are just fictitious concepts established by the relationship among consciousness, mental functions, and materiality. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Dharmas non-interactive with the mind. These fictitiously established concepts have 4 characteristics. When I say fictitiously, you really have to understand what we mean by fictitious. Fictitious because they form as a result of relationship of something, but they don't exist. A mirage on a highway when you are driving in the summertime on the road, and because of atmospheric conditions change, the heat and the mixture of the air would form a mirage of water in front of you. But it's fictitious. It's based on conditions. It doesn't. The water in front of you in that mirage, a mile ahead of you, is not water. It's fictitiously water. But it exists. You understand? Okay, so these fictitiously established concepts have 4 characteristics. They themselves cannot cognize any object, neither are they objects. They cannot think. Can space think? Can north, south, east, west think? They're just concepts established. They cannot think. Can time think? Can the past, future, and present by themselves, can they think? They cannot think. When they cannot think, they cannot cognize, then they are not interactive with the mind. They are not associated with the mind. Only if anything, if it can think, then it will associate with the mind. But if they cannot think, how can your mind associate with it? How can your mind interact with it? But they exist. They cannot exist apart from the mind. The difference? Do you see the difference? The concept of space and time themselves cannot think. But they are not existent if they are apart from the mind. Apart from the mind, they don't exist. But they are not the mind. They're not interactive with the mind. The mind can, it's just a concept. And also, they are not materiality. Is space materiality? Is space material? Space is not material. There is material in space. They're very minute. They're also a building in space, you are in space, everything is in space. As minute as atom is in space, neutron, proton is in space. But space is not proton, neutron. Materiality only appears in space, but space is not materiality. Right? You see it? If you don't see it, raise your hands. Right? Right? Okay. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm talking about. So, third, they are not unconditioned dharmas, as they are conditioned dharmas. So in other words, this dharmas, which we're going to talk about, I haven't told you yet. We just try to do some definition and do some initial understanding before we get into the 24 non-inactive dharmas. But these non-interactive dharmas are not unconditioned. They are conditioned. They only exist on conditions. If they don't exist in conditions, they're not these dharmas. They're already in another category, which is the 6 unconditioned dharmas. Nirvana is not conditioned. You understand? Okay. Although they are non-interactive with the mind, but they are meaningless and functionless if they are apart from the mind. So people say, okay, space, you said that space is non-interactive with the mind. How come I understand it? How come I know the word space? If space is not interactive, if time is not interactive with my mind, how come I can think of yesterday, past, future, and present? Yes, they exist. They cannot exist apart from the mind, but they cannot cognize. Time cannot cognize. Time is not materiality. Time is only conditioned, and it is not unconditioned. There's a lot of logic behind this. You really have to think about it to understand. Okay? Any question? It's difficult to understand. It took me 20 years. You think you can understand it in an hour? It took me 20 years to understand it. To really understand it. And I don't know if I really understand it that similar to what saints and Buddha understands. There are a lot of things in this world we don't even understand. We call it inconceivable. They are inconceivable. They beat your comprehension. You think you understand everything? Our brain only understands maybe 1% of the whole universe, or maybe not even 1%. We have the left and the right side, right, of the brain. Scientists told us. And scientists already proved some part of them. The right side is the spiritual side, and the left side is the temporal side. We're using this side to learn in school. This is the language, remembrance, emotions, and all that and all that. This is the spirituality side, which hasn't been explored. All right, so time is already up. I haven't even started. So there are 24 dharmas non-interactive with the mind. Let's get to these 24 dharmas. Now these are the 24. Acquisition, life force, commonalities by species, differentiation of species, attainment of thoughtlessness, attainment of cessation, realm of thoughtless beings, name body, predicate body, and utterance body. Let's just read them first and we'll go into them. Next, birth, arising, continuity, aging, decaying, impermanence, systematic operation, determinant differences, unifying speech, seriality, area, time, number, synthesis, and otherwise. It seems that we're going through a course of science and philosophy. That's what's in the Buddha's teaching. A 24 dharmas, non-interactive with the mind. We already think that the mind is powerful, but the mind, there are so many things that the mind cannot cognize. Maybe there's 24 of them, and let's get into the first one then. Acquisition. What is acquisition? Is a fictitiously established concept based on the relationship among consciousness, mental functions, and materiality. For example, the 5 skandhas. What are the 5 skandhas? Materiality, perception, collision, volitions, and consciousness. In other words, the five skandhas is a combination of the body and the mind. The 5 skandhas, when the 5 skandhas combined, it becomes the body life, known as the self. But self is not reality. Self is something that is just a conglomeration of mature conditions. So they just say, I have a self. I have a self. This is my self. I have a self. But your self is only a conglomeration, a combining together of conditions. You don't have a self. But you insist on having this self. You insist on satisfying yourself. You insist on egoistic self. because of this egoistic self, we perform a lot of things that bring us karmic energy, wholesome and unwholesome. That is responsible for our life and death, for our sufferings, for all the mental afflictions that we have. But we don't know about it. We just think that I have this ego. But this ego is empty. This ego is sunyata. This ego is voidness. But you always think that you have a self. You think you acquired a self. But you actually don't have a self. Because the self, first of all, is not consciousness. That self, the ego, is not. It's just a concept existed in you that you attach to. There's no such thing. Then, of course, it's not material. It is not consciousness, because that self cannot think. Your consciousness think, but that self cannot think. But your consciousness attached to that ego. That's account for the problems that we face today. Another example before we leave for lunch. If we're in the open ground, we're in a farmland, we have agricultural land, and say, I want to dig a hole 3 feet by 3 feet, or I want to dig a hole of 10 feet by 10 feet by 5 feet, so I get a volume of space. After I've taken this hole out, I have a volume of 10 feet by 10 feet by 5 feet. This is what I acquired. I acquired this space that I can put a lot of things in it. I acquired this space. But then, that space exists anyway. Whether you have excavated the soil or not. You excavated the soil, you think, I obtained the space. But even before your excavation, that's 10 by 10 already existed in it. It's filled with soil. And then when you cover it, that cave hole with soil, and then you say, I lose this space. There's no losing, there's no acquiring. You're just losing with the material. You're just excavating the material. That space is unmoved. That space has never changed. You thought it changes, but it never changed. Do you see that idea? Who hasn't got this idea? Raise your hand. Who understands it thoroughly? Raise your hands. Gee, so what do you mean? You want to raise your hand? So what is it? You are indifferent? You don't know? Or you pretend to know? You thought you acquired space by digging a hole in it, but you just removed the soil. You didn't acquire any space. You thought you lose the space by filling up with soil. You didn't lose anything. It exists anyway. You see? But in your mind, you always think of getting and losing, and you are intruding in my interest. I lose my interest. I'm getting that interest. I'm getting this fame, reputation. I'm getting all these. And if I lose this, I don't want to lose this. I want to fight for it. You're always egoistically fighting for acquisition, and you what? And you become sorrowful on your loss. You're sorrowful when you lack of love, when you lose your love. What is love? It's conditioned. It's sometimes based on misunderstanding.